Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
It's another beautiful night in downtown Las Vegas. I'm Tim Swartz, and yes, you are exploring the bizarre with myself and, of course, Mr. Timothy Green Beckley, Mr. UFO himself.
Yes, indeed. Hey, but, let's not mislead the people. We're not in beautiful Sin City. You're in Jasper, Indiana, and I'm in New York City. We are a long way from the Strip. So
my heart is in Las Vegas.
Well, and I left my purse there, my wallet there. So
I left more than my person.
Well.
My mortgage.
Your virginity, maybe.
No.
Well, that was 50 years ago. No, you're not that old. Never mind. Once again, I'm putting my foot in my mouth. But yes, this is a really great show tonight. I have been looking forward to this since I got the show together. I guess.
Since earlier today.
I got two of my best buds on, and so you're going to tell us who they are. Let's not keep the audience in suspense any longer.
Well, tonight I'm just really excited that we have got Larry Warren and Peter Robbins with us, and we're going to be talking about just all kinds of interesting things. And I guess that maybe we'll spend a few minutes talking about Rendlesham Forest and things like that. But it's maybe just a few minutes. What do you think?
Well, this is going to be a hot button topic. We are going to put a halt to Colonel Halt tonight. This is a failed attempt to discredit the prime Bentwaters whistleblower, and we've got him on the program. Now, just this past week, or at least within the last 10 days or so, Peter Robbins has written a book and released it, sort of countering the attack that continuous attack, I might say, for years by Colonel Halt, who was one of the witnesses to this phenomenon that took place there in Rendlesham Forest back in 1980 during the holiday season to discredit Larry Warren. Boy, if that's a long run-on sentence, if there ever was one. And he has laid out the information very well. I mean, he's done a good job of bringing the matter all up to date and just discrediting everything that Halt has said. And we're going to try to find out tonight what the heck is going on here. I mean, we hear a little bit about backstabbing in ufology, but this goes beyond the pale. Now, I know Larry can stick up for himself, and of course he's here to join in the conversation anytime he likes. But Peter, how are you this evening? Peter, how are you this evening? Peter's not with us.
Sorry, gentlemen. It has to do with that pause button. Yes.
That will throw you off every once in a while.
Yeah.
But as the host, sometimes I wonder why they are not answering my questions directly. I realize because the little red light is on. But Peter, when did this all start? I mean, why would Colonel Halt go to the trouble of trying to discredit the primary witness or one of the primary witnesses? Now, I understand that he might not have been joined at the hip with Larry on the particular night in the question, because there were 3 nights of sightings. And Peter, how many individuals were involved in this case altogether? We've never really gotten a direct answer, I don't think, on that. Is there an actual number?
No, the number is speculative. There were 40 or 50 men involved in the event on the third night that Larry was involved in, and certainly others deployed to the woods. We've heard numbers up to 200 men in the woods on that third night alone, and that is a figure that comes from Charles Halt as speculation. But no, we don't have an exact number. Granted, it was dozens and dozens over those 3 nights, and I would say very likely, 100, 200 men, yeah, no question.
Now, are all of them potential witnesses, or were some of them at a particular spot where they didn't see anything or they didn't witness any of this?
Well, once again, that's a speculative question. I don't know. Even after all these years, I've only spoken to a percentage of them. But there is no question that the great majority of witnesses have not come forward, and for reasons I think are very sound. They were warned, they were threatened, they were told to get on with their lives, and for most of them, they were not, the whistleblower type that Larry was and is, and they believed the threats. But you ask why. There's a number of overlaying reasons, Tim, and I think to begin with, we've got to go back to 1982, when Larry Warren was introduced to Larry Fawcett, a name that certainly is familiar to us as a well-known UFO researcher, investigator back in the day. And it was with information that Warren gave Fawcett and his writing partner Barry Greenwood for their book, Clear Intent, really the first serious book in this country on the cover-up per se, published in 1984, and the first book, period, to mention the events of December 1980 in any form. But the information that Larry Warren gave them, they put into the form of a Freedom of Information Act action, which late that spring of 83 resulted in the release of the document known as the Halt Memo, the one-page memorandum written as a courtesy to the Ministry of Defense by the then Deputy Base Commander, Lieutenant Colonel at the time, Charles I. Halt. Definitely the document redacts, compresses, minimizes the events, takes 2 days and 2 nights and shoves them into, takes 3 nights and compresses them to 2, but there it is, a genuine, authentic report validating the reality of at least some of the events that comprise the Rendlesham Forest incident, signed by the Deputy Base Commander on an Air Force letterhead. That document made its way to England and ultimately was in a very low-life form, sold to the News of the World, then the largest tabloid in the world, for either $25,000 or £25,000. And the story broke, well, the analog equivalent of digitally over the weekend, the first weekend in October of 1983. Charles Halt's name was all over it. And the fact is that his career suffered as a result. He was scheduled for promotion at the time of the events. He was actually became a colonel within a week or so of the RFI. But his career went on for almost another dozen years, and he did not advance in rank at all.
Well, can we definitely blame that on the UFO phenomena?
No, but I think we can definitely say it was a contributing factor. Charles Halt became the subject of some ridicule. He was courageous in saying things like, what my men and I saw on the night in question was not built by any government on earth. But he, from the get-go of finding out in 84 that it was Warren, 83 actually, he started to have things to say about him that were ultimately proved to be wrong, incorrect, distorted, exaggerated, not true. And
now, just let me ask
if
one
you
question
must
here.
speak.
Peter.
It's your
Now,
show. All right.
okay, is Colonel Halt contesting that there was a third night at all?
Oh, no, I think he
Yeah.
now absolutely understands and accepts that not in contention. But what we see in what came to a head this summer, after 30 years of taking pot shots at Larry, some of them really vicious and mean-spirited, other ones extremely destructive in terms of character, honesty, integrity, things that Larry embodies, but that Halt was doing a good job of undercutting. This summer, it really all came to a head when Mr. Halt, acting on an invitation from a conference organizer in the UK, returned to the town of Suffolk, the town of Woodbridge in Suffolk, which is the nearest town to the events of 1980, and gave a talk there. People paid £20 a head to hear him speak. The first part of the talk was very much what I hoped it would be, namely his reflections, thoughts, observations, and memories from his command position, and also from the view of being a witness. However, in the final half hour, 40 minutes or so, he turned his entire attention toward attacking my co-author and your friend in every possible manner. The book that we spent 9 years writing and that we will both always be very proud of as fairly worthless, and attacking myself as a not very credible investigative writer. And thank goodness this was all videotaped, recorded, not digitally, and that was made available shortly after the event. I watched it a few days later and was kind of a mixture of disgusted, disappointed, angry, sad, and really, ultimately, really pissed off, especially as I started to go through his accusations and charges point by point by point, and realize that all but maybe two of them out of several dozen were completely without anything to back them up. They were not true for a number of reasons. It's one thing to make an error or even a series of errors in giving a public talk. I know it. I've done it. Someday you may do it too, Tim, being that you're perfect. I know it hasn't happened yet.
Never.
No.
No.
But it made me furious. I mean, where the hell does anybody come off doing this to start with? And the fact is, it's been going on for such a long time, and it really had to stop. So I began the fact-checking, the research, the investigation, and realized that if I wanted to do this, I had to do it right. And that meant backing up even the smallest disparaging remark with a full response and whatever I could put together in the way of the kind of proof that ideally you'd like to present in a court of law, because what this came down to was a case of multiple counts of slander as defined under English law. And I'm not an attorney. I read all the statutes that I could digest and came away feeling that when readers see the case that I presented, whether or not they are in the law, that they will agree that if this is something that Larry Warren wants to press in a UK court, he certainly has every potential of winning it, but more in the court of public opinion. This is not to be confused with a spat between colleagues or a difference of opinion between investigators. This is one person who for more than 3 decades has been getting it wrong, and I think intentionally, certainly to a degree, and relying on his often fallback line of, who do you believe or who do you trust or who would you prefer, a colonel or an airman? Well, I think time has told, as well as the evidence, that the airman is the person to trust here. And my new book, Halt in Woodbridge, I think brings that point home.
Well, Peter, I think I should mention here, and I have mentioned it a few times on the air, that I saw Larry make what I would believe was his first public presentation. It was on the stairs of the Brewster Middle School in Brewster, New York. Back in, Larry, would that have been 1985?
1984.
1984. See that?
Actually, I think it might have been, Tim,
83?
83, guys.
Santa Maria, yeah.
It was the Hudson Valley thing going on.
That's
and that
correct.
was current in the New York Times, so that's 1983.
Yes, this was a town hall meeting that had been called by, I guess, Peter Gersten, to get people who had witnessed this sighting of a triangular boomerang-shaped object over the Hudson Valley to come in and make public statements. And the public wanted to do this because there were thousands of witnesses to this all through that area of New England. Dr. Hynek was there. I think Jacques Vallée, any number of credible researchers into the field. And
Bud was there. Whitley was there. You and I, of course.
That's indeed, yes.
Well,
and Larry...
Whitley was years away from communion at that point.
Yeah.
And, the other cool guy was the Mothman fella there.
John Keel.
John Keel was there.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that was cool.
You might have even come with him, Tim.
That was really fun.
And Larry stood out on the stairs, and I stood at a distance, and there was a sizable group of people there listening to his story. And I said to me, this is either the most incredible UFO incident that I've heard in a long, long time, or it's total trash. I mean, I didn't know Larry at the time, but it just seemed, even now, looking back, it seems like, wow, this is a fantastic incident, and now we know that it is very well documented, perhaps the most documented UFO incident in history, as far as I'm concerned. And we did publish the first book here in America on the subject, From Out of the Blue by Jenny Rendels, which was later reprinted in paperback edition. And Larry told his story pretty much, as I can recall, the same way he has told it today. But it was hard to verify at that time because was this your first attempt to go public with this? And why did you decide to pick that particular place? And, it just seems like you were putting a lot on the line.
Well, that was funny enough. That's the day I met you, Tim, and Peter. And it'd be years before we met again, but that was the same exact day. And I went there with Bentwaters, as it was known at that time. I was working with Larry Fawcett by then, and we were waiting. You know what? I'm trying to get the year right, but it's so long ago, isn't it? But it was a
long time ago.
It's a long time, and I think maybe the memo was out, maybe it wasn't yet, and because they had been trying for that for months, and numerous denials were going on from the Air Force, and I didn't think anything would come of any of it, and I didn't go out on the steps to talk to anyone. I wasn't at that gig. I went there with Larry Fawcett and his wife, maybe. I think she was there, and Betty Andreasen and Robert Luca, her husband. And those were the very first people around this subject at all that I ever spoke to in late 1983, and they introduced me to Larry Fawcett. And I just simply wanted to talk, when I spoke to Bob and Betty, people other than my family, because I'm not from a UFO sort of family really at all, and in fact, I'm it. And we went down to that because the Hudson Valley and Connecticut overflights were going on. It was in the New York Times, etc. And I had spoken to Hynek on the phone by then, and I think I met him for the first time at that in person, but I'd already spoken with him. And I went out. It was a break outside, and I can remember really clearly some bonehead got on the. You remember, these are the early days of, the early 80s of ufology was horrific. I frankly didn't like many of the researchers involved in it. Kind of haven't changed my view, but I like a lot of them, and there's a lot that, nah. But I came out. There was a guy that was so insulted, and he didn't know who I was from a moth, and I didn't know anybody, and he said to me, this guy stood on stage. You might remember he said one must have a BA degree to be at least even considered to tell what they've seen as far as the UFO goes. So therefore, I got, half the audience were gone. And this guy was some researcher. I don't know who the guy is. He was another flash in the pan, as they often are. And the guy outside was a garbage man. And he said to me, he showed me these pictures of the superstructure of one of these triangular things, which I saw in Connecticut in '86 anyway, but he showed me it. And he said, Larry, I'm a garbage man. And he goes, once that idiot said you needed a bachelor's degree to even, he said, I was going to share this with these, and it was totally real. It was pre-CGI and all that. And he walked, but he showed me. And that's where I got a taste, that's in our book, actually. I wrote that. I'll never forget it. So I went outside to smoke. And there were people around. And Tim, you had a very subdued nuclear explosion of a jacket on. I can remember it. And I'm like, there was a little hill, and there was this guy. And I mean, I think your hair was like, it was a rainbow thing going on that weekend with your hair.
Yeah.
The lights were going around the glasses, and I said, "I've got to meet that guy." I go, I thought you were in some famous band. I just did not know. I said, I know this guy, and and I'm standing, and somehow I was talking with someone with Larry Fawcett, and then one ear was there, and then another ear, and then a number of people started to gather, and then there was a lot of people. So I kept repeating the basic gist of what, it was about, Bentwaters, and it wasn't anything to anyone then. And, there was some characters. There really was. And that's when I met you guys. And I remember going in, and Peter had a black T-shirt on. In fact, that picture's in our book when, Peter, you're with Hynek. And you said hi. And I do remember that. And I'm like, oh, hi, how you doing? And boom, that was it. Who knew? I had no idea of any of this stuff. But at that point, the first real talk I did was Larry Fawcett brought me to some kind of, not an Elks Club, Masonic hall in Connecticut. And this fella I know who still tells me, I put on your first gig. Well, it wasn't me. It was Larry. And he brought me up as a...
hold that thought, because we are going away for a few minutes, back
Very
up
excited.
into the astral, back way up, and we will return shortly on Exploring the Bizarre.
The KCOR Digital Radio Network hotline number is open at 702-425-9230. 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. Tweet your comments anytime to KCOR Radio, or simply use hashtag KCOR. Even better, jump in the live chat room and share your thoughts with the show at kcorradio.com. Now back to Exploring the Bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
I know I'm feeling electrified tonight, and I do encourage our listeners to get a hold of us however you can. Text us, call us, go to our chat room. We want to hear your questions. I I love it when our listeners send us questions because I mean it's just they can they can come up with some questions that are certainly unique, and that's that's what helps make our show special. So, gentlemen, getting back to what we were talking about now. All of us naturally are very familiar with the Bentwaters case, but would one of you like to give our listeners just maybe kind of like a thumbnail version of just exactly what happened, when it happened, and what transpired that has left us all so mystified all these years?
Well, why don't we have Larry do that because he was there? Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Who
Can you imagine? Why would anyone ask me?
Yeah.
Oh, it stuns me. I've lived out of America for almost 16 years. I live in Liverpool, England, and I'm always stunned. I've heard me being done by so many other people for years over there. I'm still alive, folks. We, I know a bit about it, and it was 3 nights, December 1980. It was Charles Holt's night was on my night. That's the third night. There's no mystery about it. Different parts of the fields. He was also involved with us, it's seeming. What people probably over there don't know, I don't know what people in America know that follow this stuff anyway, but it's, some primary guys are all together now. John Burroughs, Adrian Bustinza, myself. We've all come together, other witnesses as well. And so, it's not this just Larry out there anymore. And in fact, we're in the majority now. And then you have these other factions with Charles Holt and Jim Peniston, who was involved on the first night. And that's the time travel thing, which is not in my experience at all from what I went through. And I wasn't that was 2 nights previous, and I can't address that at all. But, I mean, there's been a real effort to, turn us all against each other. I was with John Burroughs over here last year down at the bases, down at Woodbridge and Bentwaters. And I'll tell you what, man, that just put so much together. And then just recently I did a radio show with Adrian and John on John's radio show. And on KGRA, actually, a Phenomena is the show. And I'll tell you, I can't believe how much has just come around full circle. Peter's new book addressing Charles Holt's things I can't even imagine. You'd think he'd be right on one thing, but it's intentional. And John and I have discussed this and the reasons why. And, I don't know. Like I said, he was a pretty nice colonel, lieutenant colonel, an officer on the base. He was the deputy commander, and he was rather accessible and he's a friendly guy. And but we had nuclear weapons there. Sergeant Bustinza just came out and said that too. It's not only me anymore, and that makes it extreme defense significance. But regardless, we had 3 nights of objects on the ground, in the air. And a lot of high strangeness going around near the base, on the forest in between it, called Rendlesham. And a woman named Georgina Bernay back in the late 90s, early 2000s, did a book about it. And I'm not a fan of that book, but for a million reasons. But it kind of got rebranded as the Rendlesham Forest incidents, so the English got a hold of it. Well, people have to understand these events broke in America first. I was the guy that did it. And Peter and mine's book, that really the true history of how it came out is within that book. There's no other way it came out. That's how it came out. And so the huge effort to rewrite it, the History Channel is as guilty as anyone since 2010. That didn't last long, but there was you might recall, in America anyway, it was a very big effort to kind of rebrand this thing, like it all just came out then. I'm sure little kiddies out there on YouTube land or whatever thinks it just popped out with Jim Peniston. And you have to know your history before you go forward with this, because it's very serious stuff. It's not entertainment for ancient aliens and all that stuff. I've never been on the show. I could care less about it, but that's the way it is. And it affected us serving airmen. We weren't young airmen wandering the woods. We were trained killers in my job when we got there. Yes, we were young, but we weren't on the campus at UCLA. We were there doing a job defending the assets. It was the Cold War. Tensions were really high with Poland at the time, with the Russians maybe invading Poland. We were frontline base. And so you have these things coming in, doing what they did, and they weren't from here. It wasn't us at all. And then containment teams coming into our base to, really meddle with it, the participants. And I don't think our command could do anything about it. I think there's some guilt involved with Mr. Halt and some other officers, by the way, that they had no control over these containment teams that flew in their own aircraft with their own security teams, etc. This established fact. I wrote a letter to my mother within days of the events describing just that anyway, and shocked that it got through to her. I had already tried to call her, got cut off on the phone. On my night, I was brought out by Sergeant Bastinza and Lieutenant Bruce England. I was on a not very often manned post. We were in a heightened state of readiness because 2 previous nights these things had been going on, but I didn't know about it, and there was no rumor mill. So for about a year or so, once all this got public, I kind of thought it must have all taken place on one night, because how could this go on 3? I didn't know about it, and but it did. And we were brought out to get lighting equipment replaced, light-alls. And we got out into the forest, and the light-alls would not work. You could not get out into the areas where these incidents were taking place.
Tell us what a light-all is. Most people would not know.
Yeah, it's a gas-generated 2 spotlights sitting on a big generator with a trailer. You hitch it to a vehicle, and you can tow it. And it's used to light aircraft refueling at night, on a runway and things.
Now, how many were there, and did they all not light up, or just several of them?
Yeah, there was they all malfunctioned, and nothing worked in the clear. You couldn't get anything to the field known as Capel Green, so everything went up to a clearing. But it was impossible for vehicles to get down there. But it was the dead of night, but nothing lit, and they were trying to light the operation area, but they couldn't do it. And then over in this campsite, which John and I were just talking about the other day, which he informed me was they had a command and control situation set up in what is now a campsite. And it was probably very small back then. Who knows? It was the middle of winter. I didn't know the forest. None of us knew the name of those woods. They were just the woods near Woodbridge Base. That was all it was to us. It meant nothing. Rendlesham Forest, its history, Lighthead, none of this meant beans to us. We were there with nuclear weapons and very mean aircraft, and we all carried big naughty guns, and we didn't think of the names of forest, and that ghosts were seen in the was not an issue. But there was a lot of folklore in East Anglia, in that area, which we were all pretty much introduced to when we got there. Long and short of it is that, because I don't want to get, like you keep saying, Las Vegas and all that, after a lot of years, because this thing has moved on so far from what I might have said in 1983, though some people in the States might not have known anything since then about me or whatever, is that it's kind of redundant, and it's kind of like Dion and the Belmonts doing their hit in Vegas, and it ties it all up and slows it down. We saw things that aren't from here. That's it. And it was contained and in a field in Capel Green. It was filmed, photographed. John Burroughs was there that same night. He was off duty. He had a thing happen with Sergeant Bastinza just after I left. We all have missing time, up to 14 hours worth after that, which I only figured out last year, and I think a number of us have. We just huge blank spot on how we left that place, that field. The woods. I don't remember getting back to the base. I don't know how I danced around it in our book. I just went, back to the base. I never, if it got too weird, I just kind of glanced over it, not knowing that, there was The intelligence community got involved within hours, and there were injections given to some people. And that was to not obscure. I have no doubt. I know exactly where I stood, where I was looking at this phenomena. It wasn't in real time. Things seemed half speed. You'd hear that from other witnesses too. But I was just the first on record with any of it.
Now, Larry, tell us what exactly did, I mean, because we've heard a variety of discussions on what people saw. Exactly what did you see? You saw lights first coming down out of the sky, and then a vessel on the ground?
No, I never saw anything in the sky. I saw a red light came in from the North Sea, south of the Orford Lighthouse. And there's an idiot here in England called Ridpath that the British, I'll tell you, since 1983, the British press, which is, oh man, weak as a noodle over here, but run and dredge this guy up all the time. And they talk about it being a lighthouse. It's just such a bitch slap to my brothers.
Or the top of a revolving light on a police cruiser.
Well, that was just a few years ago, and this non-witness who came up. But and then there was, oh man, these people, I just punch them in the throat if I ever met them. But the press love it, and the debunkers love it. But no debunker ever wants to come and meet us actual participants like this Ridpath has been invited to. And they never do because they're stone cold. Well, I don't know. I remember the days of Phil Class, and I could dance with him real easy. These guys over here, they're even worse. They hide and they just don't come out. It's like little turtles, they won't come out. But they're not an issue to me. They're silly folks. The lighthouse in my family has always been a family kind of joke nowadays. But I saw an object come in the sky, and it dispersed in a lot of color, and an explosion, I call it, but there was no noise, and it was very bright. And I was with other people that are known people, and everything was slow motion, and there was a structured object in front of us. Which, funny enough, it took 34 years to realize I'd taken a picture of it 12 hours earlier, but in the air. Didn't see it. That's a whole other story, and I can't get in there, but probably people in the States don't even know about that. I mean, nothing surprises me with any of this. But there's proof out there. Let me tell you, there's more proof of these events than any incident ever. Any. This is it. This is the one you go into court. And not Roswell, none of that. This. Those guys died. We're alive still, The younger end of this is in our mid-50s, but and you're getting up into your 80s. But I'm sorry, this is the one. I think the Yankee thing is that, it didn't happen here, and let's chase Roswell around. Or, I'm not saying anyone else is. I'm for the witness, totally. But these cause celeb incidents, and they run around making movies ad nauseum of Roswell and whatever. Hey, hello, they're all dead. They took it down the ground with them.
Including the aliens.
That's right, yeah.
And it's become a circus. Well, I don't know if ufology in Yankee land is afraid of something where it's got so much teeth. Because I will say that ufology, you guys invited me on, and I am not part of this field. I have only been part of it because I got contained within it. I only wanted to talk to people outside of my family. Now, this is not an insult to anyone. Tim, you're a dear friend, Peter, Tim, Schwartz, Tina. But I will tell you and whoever, the feds never needed to contain anything, because once I went out and met Betty and Bob, who are fine, lovely people with personal experiences, they turned me on to this copper named Larry Fawcett, who was lieutenant. He's deceased now. And then they get involved with CAUSE. And what's CAUSE? Citizens Against UFO Secrecy. I was already contained. As soon as this moved forward, I was contained. And then Rendlesham or Bentwaters, whatever they called it then, was boxed. And then it became entertainment at the conferences. And, I only did these gigs for years, and I occasionally do one or two because just to see old friends, really, because I really did believe it. I did not know where it would go, and I did not know how the documents I got the Halt memo out. I got the Halt audio tape out, which is very famous. If no one knows about it, it's on YouTube. I didn't put it there. In fact, I never put a price on any of it either. Here in England, they put a price right away on the Halt memo when we sent it to help certain people here. £25,000, Peter. In 1983, that'd be equivalent of about $100,000 right now.
Ouch.
Yeah, and they did that. That was sold on the blood of my brothers, including myself. Yeah. And so, people spent more time running around going, they kept the tape in a drawer over here, sold that to the Japs. I went to Japan in 84 for the sole reason of getting that tape. And they said, keep it between us. And I go, you bet. As soon as I got home, I gave it to Chuck DeCaro, who was with CNN Special Assignments, which did the first, in fact, CNN's highest rated special assignment to that point, called UFO, the Bentwaters Incident, featuring many other witnesses that were all blacked out, also talking about life forms seen. So I guess my bitch here, my point, my angst is probably that I'm about my brothers that went through it, and a lot of us are together nowadays. But I must say, and I'll turn it back, I absolutely, other than the dear friendships I have struck up for the beginning, which would be Mr. Beckley and Mr. Robbins. And Tim, I met you probably. You look familiar on my picture.
We've never met personally, unfortunately.
Well, you're damn lucky you never met me. No.
Well,
But I
hope you never have to, Tim.
I will say this. I absolutely owe ufology zero, nothing. This was done by the witnesses. It's only been interfered with, rewritten, chopped, diced like a sushi restaurant, sold, this and that, packaged, rewritten, resold, rebranded by ufology. I bane the day that I went. I should have gone to the New York Times, but back in that time, who the hell would have listened to anyone with this? There were no documents. So it all got itself contained, and I own nothing because the ufology did nothing for me. These big players, they might have wished me well at a distance, but, he's a bit dangerous back then. There was no one like me in this stuff then. No one. I wasn't a researcher. I'm not one. I'm not a professional witness, but I saw my brothers get hurt. I got hurt. We're all, not just John Burroughs with his severe injuries. I have the same issues, except John has gone through, more critical medical stuff and has been recognized for such. But no, this, absolutely not. This is no researcher out there. Peter Robbins, you plowed the driveway, brother. But the MUFONs to this, and I'm not attacking anyone. I'm really going back to that era, which I think a lot of the modern internet-born ufologists nowadays, they weren't even around the subject then. All these big names on the internet, they didn't exist. I knew Alan Hynek. That's what I say. Tim, you've been around since the damn 60s. Peter, the 70s.
Yeah. Well, I bought my first UFO magazine. I think it was 1957. I would have been 10 years old because that's when I had my first sighting. And then I would take books out of the library, and I guess I belonged to a Doubleday book club, which might even still be around. I think you could buy Major Kehoe's book for 99 cents, probably what it's worth. And that was a good book, and Edward Ruppelt and all of that. When I was 10 years old and I was wet behind the ears as far as this all goes, everything seemed new and exciting. Now it's hard to find anything that really hasn't been said 100 times before, and I'm often open-mouthed when I tell people something and they say, "Oh, geez, I never heard of that," or I thought that Art Bell was the first person ever to do a UFO show or something like that. Anyway, we're getting a lot of questions here from listeners far and wide. So, Tim, why don't you go ahead and read one of the questions?
Yeah, we've got a question from Dave in the UK, and he wants to know, Larry, if you think that Halt is out to discredit you, or do you think that others may be putting pressure on him to do that?
Oh, right. Well, that's a good question. Is Halt out to do? Look, it's not just me and John and I keep mentioning John because we just were with John yesterday on the radio.
Yeah.
John Burroughs, who is, by the way, has taken the lead on this. He really is such a mensch, isn't he? I'll tell you, what a great guy. And he's done so well with really pushing this forward. He's a 27-year veteran of the military, too, but real a soldier for the truth. Question on with Halt. He has gone after other guys to include John and everything. What he did at this particular thing in Woodbridge in July, which was put on by this absolute circus clown named John Hansen and this other person who's a bird watcher. I mean, I'm sorry, these are the experts that rob people at 20 pounds each to come in and, sit there and blow. One of the guys says he got this, David Bryant gets astronauts drunk and they tell him they never went to the moon. I absolutely hope they listen to that YouTube thing and sue him like till he's a cinder on the ground, those heroes. I hope they burn his beams. These are clowns. The other guy writes books on UFO. I don't know. He takes articles, stuffs them in a book, cries about how much it cost him. Well, stop doing it. But he also has a picture of Jim Peniston and under it, a young Larry Warren. And this is acceptable to people as experts.
It could have been in another life.
Well, yeah. With Halt, that's just not a new dynamic. Is there pressure on him? I think there might be. Again, he was a decent guy. He wasn't one of these nasty people, in command on our base. See, I knew all these guys before this stuff happened.
Well, yet Holt claims that you weren't even stationed on the base at that time.
Oh, no,
is that correct?
Tim, I think the states are so behind I'm afraid behind. I go home to see my mother when I can. I don't know what the states know about Rendlesham anymore or Bentwaters, if anything. They, and no offense on that. No, they did try that in the 80s. I was never in the Air Force. They've done it with John Burroughs. They've done it with Adrian Bustinza. Halt has done that. Others have. And in reality, and then Halt came out on a show and then confirmed I was there and other people, not just, involved in the events. And then he goes back and says we weren't or I wasn't and this guy. So they try to keep the public really confused or anyone that follows this. Frankly, I think most people look at this subject matter as entertainment. I think the people that actually live through this kind of a thing in their private, aren't really wanting to get around it too much because, and like other witnesses that have not come forward, there's plenty of us, but man, you don't want to come out and, you're going to get used by researchers. You're going, not all of them, but you're going to get used. They all smell a book in them, there's a book here, but they forget there's a human behind that book. That's why I'm an advocate for witnesses of all kinds, to the legitimate ones, and Travis Walton and all, those kind of cats. But I think that Dave in England, there's some pressure on him somewhere. I don't think he's an evil human being at all. This was a very real, serious set of events. I blew the lid on it, and the whistleblower thing. I'm a real one. And I had no idea where it would go. It wasn't my intention.
All right. Well, unfortunately, gentlemen, we are coming up on our hour break, so let's go ahead and do that. You are listening to Exploring the Bizarre with Tim Beckley and our guest, Larry Warren and Peter Robbins. I'm Tim Schwartz.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Schwartz.
All right, welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. Tonight we're talking with Larry Warren and Peter Robbins, and I have to go to another question that we got here, guys. This was from Betty in Texas, and she wants to know that if Halt says that that he is speaking the truth, and Larry, I suppose why would you think that he's afraid of sharing the stage, with someone like you and Peter?
Why is he afraid?
Why? Yeah. Well, if he claims that he's presenting the truth, and that
Right.
that you and Peter are not. Why would he be afraid then of maybe sharing the stage
Well,
with you and
the
Peter?
person in Texas should read Peter Robbins' new book. I mean, it's, with all respect, it's called Halton Woodbridge, and it kind of will tell you why. But if you've heard my tone on this particular show right now, Betty in Texas, you'd probably also understand why he wouldn't want to. It's, listen, in the end, we want all of us witnesses, not fans or interested parties, and want to get together. And I am willing to sit down, and he needs to be part of it in the ideal world, because he was the boss. He was not the top guy on site at all, nor was Sergeant Jim Peniston the senior man with boots on the ground, as he loves to say. He was not. Bob Ball was my guy that night, my boss. And the nonsense. I think the fact is he came over here, and like Peter said, he did his talk to a point, and then he just explodes. And John Burroughs sums it up very well. He gets to a point where I'm very awkward, talking, because I knew Colonel Holt as Colonel Holt, and I'm not happy with the things he has said. And honestly, I don't think he is either. And I think he knows otherwise, and I think he was meddled with also. But I think too much would come out. He has probably been assigned, I think, to keep us all fighting at each other, the witnesses. And we did that work for a long, long time. And it doesn't work now. And we're in the majority. And the majority is guys saying we need to get together, not at a UFO conference or for any groups or whatever. We need to get there, maybe at the National Press Club, maybe something in America, because in England it will be suppressed. They can't even do anything with Putin over here. He's ready to cause World War III, and England's folded like a bad deck chair over it all in NATO. So keep an eye on that one. But, they're flying into Turkey now, and England's like, oh, dear, oh, God, what happened to real politicians? But so that's the reason, his assignment, and it's not worked. But I think anyone wants to see it just broken down. Knock a few pennies off your budget and go on the guy worked hard on it. I don't work for free. Get this thing, because it's not only about me. It's really how a whistleblower in anything, you can go to Frank Serpico, you can get any kind of thing, is dealt with. Yeah. And it's the standard operating procedure of how you try to isolate. But it's not just me. And it's a shame. I hope someone, if ufology really wants resolution on this, you get some of the big players over there, throw their money where it counts instead of, whatever they do, and get us fellas that are alive, just get our expenses, that's all. No one wants money, and get us in there. And I'll tell you what, the world will, the house of cards will fall, because the world changed those 3 nights. It was a serious international incident involving someone else. And like Colonel Holt says, involving technology that was not built on Earth. And you know what? People have to get over that if they can't accept it. We don't much like that reality, but we looked at it. We were there. We've seen it. So I would always recommend Peter's new book. And you look at its ratings on Amazon, I think others are seeing it for what it is, except for the 2 trolls that tried to get their first thing in before it was even published.
Yeah. Well, that's Amazon's reviews for you. I've had books that haven't even sold 1 copy yet, and people have reviewed it negatively.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, no, Pete's doing he's a 5-star boy, this guy. But he had 2 little rodents that before the book was, I think, on Amazon's listing, that came in and goes, I've read half through it, and that's it, or not one bit of proof. Well, let me tell you what, more than any courtroom, this thing. And it's use me as an example. I'm not out to make friends. I got friends, man. I'm not out to be with, I think people know my view of the subject matter. There's a reality going on here. I'm about witnesses, all witnesses, that real witnesses. that because I'm tougher than any of the enemies that have come up against me over the years, and that else I wouldn't be around. Not with this one. And this is the one you can take to the bank. It really is. And if you want reality and resolution and people held to account while they're still breathing, because this affected not just us, but our families and our friends and et cetera, et cetera. It's never been about money because there's no money in any of this stuff. This is the one. So I wish one day we get together, and he does. He's 76 now, chooses to, just come in there. But, these guys have pensions. They have a lot to lose. And again, we don't know the hammer hanging over his head. I don't know. I suspect there is one.
Yeah, and let me jump in very briefly to say to the gal that asked the question, the reason that Mr. Hall has no interest in sitting down and debating this, discussing this, going over our points of difference is because with a lot of due diligence, I've essentially established that Larry, something that a number of people have known for decades, has consistently been putting forward the truth as he knows it, understands it, and has lived it. And Charles Hall has been being very deceptive. And this book is so hyper-specific and nailing down those details that, with respect, I wouldn't want to sit down with us if I were Mr. Halt either at this point.
We did sit down with Halt in 1993, I think.
Yeah.
And we sat down and we brought everything to the table in person, folks. And that's all in our book, Left at Eastgate. And that's on Amazon too, And we went down through the whole thing, and he just folded his tent. He just said, well, someone's, feeding me bad information. It's not that. He knows the score because he was involved on our night. He came up. Sergeant Adrian Bastinza said that he came up to us because there was some bobbies, one guy named Brian Creswell, and they came up and told us to take cameras off them. And there were some there was only 2 Suffolk cops for that whole region. And you can hear them arrive on the whole tape. They had a different siren than our stuff. They came in blowing horns and everything. And they did. And, welcome to Suffolk. And the cameras was taken off, and Adrian says that was Halt. And I think I knew he walked up to Bruce England when we were parked, and they went back out, and that's the continuation of his audio tape. So much when you get us together, like John and I, who was off duty the 3rd night, but I saw him out there clearly. I showed him where he was stopped with Chris Arnold, and in a law enforcement car is brought out in, and civvy clothes. I think it was kind of recounted in a show that's, I guess, not getting aired in the States with both of us, but TV show. And, people have to understand there's a huge effort to contain this thing. They can't kill all of us, whoever they are. It's the same outfit that came in and the containment teams on their own aircraft, and they don't come in doing that for lighthouses or anything. No one would carry this and run around with it. It affected so many people, and that's where I come out of a 1980 bag on. People that it's exciting. It's like a movie, or it's whatever people view these things. I don't know how they could. George Harrison always said, he's asked, what's it like to be a Beatle, and he'd say, I don't know what it's like not to be. So I don't know how other people view this whole thing as a whole. But I will say this, and I'll turn it back to you good folks. This should never have been about me, whether I was there or not, or what, because at the end I could have been Adolf Hitler's grandson, but I still produced the Halt memo. I got it out. I got the witnesses identified. I got the Halt memo into the public realm. It should never have been about me. It should have been about the events, which is all I wanted. But people have to focus, and obviously I'm pretty good at pissing people off, which is kind of my party trick. But
and now, unfortunately, many people. will be focusing on Larry's being the grandson of Hitler. That is about to sweep the internet.
Oh, yeah, that'll be the new one.
Mark
Yeah.
my words. Yes.
Well, that's the point, though.
Great grandson.
That'll be in the Mirror. What's the newspaper over there? The Mirror.
Well, the News of the World is gone now.
That's right. Well, the Mirror is there's one paper over there that has these sensationalistic headlines about UFO stories that really don't deserve the attention that they give them.
Yeah. Oh, the Daily Mail does a good job at that.
The Daily Mail, well, that must be it then.
England is dreadful when it comes to the subject. It's Rendlesham is the 35th anniversary coming up in December, and I will tell you that things will pop up in the press, and it's usually thanks to Nick Pope, because Nick loves, he's a media darling, and I've
got another word.
Yeah. I was thinking
it is the same thing, and they call people like us UFO spotters, UFO chasers. It's the same modus operandi that was going on since Rendlesham Bentwaters broke in the News of the World, because the document was sold to them. And then they made up an interview with me, which is based on an anonymous source to some British researchers, because I just didn't want my name used. And that was a tabloid. We had nothing to do with any of this stuff. That Mike Luckman cat from New York years ago, Tim, and you guys know, when that Halt memo came out, he got wind of it. And he called me on the phone and he said, we could sell that for $5,000. And I'm thinking, I was a young guy, and I go, that's a motorcycle or a down payment or whatever. And my old man, and I never will forget this, he said to me, and I go, Dad, you signed, and he goes, is your name on it? And I said, no. And it was before anyone knew the document itself. And he said, well, if you sell that, you're going to regret it. And I listened to my old man on that. And so I never put a price tag. They did, and it was done here. And it's this little provincial. The UK and Europe. I was in Denmark last year. I've been to Italy with all this. Each country is so different with how they the things and how they view this phenomenon. But England is so. Oh man, it is not the people, but the press and the way the media is. It is absolutely the ultimate police state, and you're recorded about 3,500 times a day doing anything on CCTV cameras, and they've got to keep the republic, and they have to at any cost. And it's so small that being an American, you see through it, the royal scam, real fast, and it's kind of frustrating. Otherwise people are kind of in it. And England has a lot. The MOD and everything are just as dirty, rotten with all this, and as accountable about Rendlesham as the Department of Defense. And they're chicken shits, all of them, in my view.
Hey, Peter. So tell us now. What are some of the other points that you raised in your book in defending Larry?
Well, there's really a myriad of them, and they break down into several dozen specific charges, allegations, insinuations, insults, complete made-up stuff, completely ignored factual material. Some examples are, one thing Halt seems to have a real bee in his bonnet about is that at those times that they were, Larry and Adrian Bustinza were in a certain area after Mr. Halt and his men were, Charles Halt dismisses the credibility of Larry's account, completely ignoring the point that, I'll give you two examples. Halt says, Larry says that when he was in Capel Green, two cows kind of wandered into the area, were there for a while, looked a bit dazed, and wandered out. I was there earlier, and there were no cows, i.e., therefore, Larry is wrong and I'm right, even though one of my men stepped in something that the cows left that was fresh enough that, he stepped in a cow pie, but still unwilling to concede that we're not dealing with some strange concept of time.
All I can say is cowabunga.
Quite so. Another favorite of mine is Larry observes with Adrian that there is a light that goes on in the second floor of the farmhouse well off to the left in Capel Green. Halt observes that when he is there earlier that evening, there is no light on in the farmhouse. Therefore, he is right and Larry is wrong. And, I mean, this would be funny if it weren't so serious. He makes some extremely insulting, I wouldn't even call them jokes. At one point in the forest, because he's on his walk, misinforming folks there, that what could have accounted for security specialist Warren having observed what he felt was a UFO on the ground? Funny cigarettes. Now, isn't that humorous? The only time I've ever heard anyone make a joke about Rendlesham witnesses mistaking what they saw because they were blowing joints in the woods was Philip Klass. And I thought, as my dear sister Helen
let me cut in there, Peter. Also, Gordon Williams did that on that Brian Gumble show from many years ago we did. And he also said, I've heard a story, and I think he was smoking funny cigarettes. So, and Brian, so there you go. Yeah.
Well, again, that's very peripheral.
Well, on duty, smoking, pot is what they're saying. Yeah. And the reality is, I think the biggest point in your book for me is got to be because there's so much. There's just so much, folks, that you'd be surprised that he would just do that, but he did it, and which was so easy to dismantle, all of it. But not easy because it took you a while, but it's all there. But he makes it that we, in passing, ran into Bud Hopkins once on the street or something. In reality, and I think he was speaking to there were a lot of people that just didn't know anything about the events or the history at all in that room, from what I'm assuming, and that was the target audience. And in reality, Bud Hopkins, if Halt's holding up our book, having a go at it, but in reality, if he had opened it, he'd see Bud Hopkins wrote the foreword to it on the newer edition. And, Peter worked with him since the 70s, and I knew Bud since 1983. And that was just one stunning thing. I was like, what? We met him once? It's madness. But for the boneheads in the room that paid 20 pounds, and clapped like seals as my family's name would drag through the mud and insulted, I'm sure it worked for them.
Yeah. Another thing that happens, Tim, is, as you know, getting into the book now, is he gets to a point where he starts citing specific page numbers in Left at Eastgate and having a go at information that he feels is incorrect, misrepresentative, what have you. All well and good, and he is entitled to come at us any way that he wants if it's based on something, if there's any reality to it. I would say about a third of the references, and we're talking specific book pages, there's nothing there. Or as they used to say, there's no there. In other cases, the information is well in another part of the book and completely off the mark of what he's attacking. At one point, he harps on something that he has accused Larry of for decades now, that he says that Larry said or wrote that Colonel Williams' vehicle was driven down the road, on the logging road, and somehow was able to go over the berm and through or under or over or around the fence that separates the forest from Capel Green. When what Larry actually writes in the book is, in so many words, that the vehicle came as far down the road as it could go before it couldn't go anymore, and then gets out and starts to talk with other officers on location. He simply refuses to read it. And at the same time, he misquotes it and cites it as an error of Larry's and not his. If there are 40 data points, I'm going to say, and I've never actually counted them, I guess I should, I'm going to say that 38 of them are simply untrue. They're mistaken, they're disinformation, they're thought substituted for empirical fact, they're complete distortions, and in some cases, I have no idea where he gets his information. My best deduction is that it's simply manufactured. And again, this is not the exception to the rule. This is what he did with that entire 35 or so minute period of time. And based on all of the extraordinary attacks over 30 years on Larry primarily, our book in part, and occasionally a pot shot at me, this was amazing. I mean, who have you ever heard of? Forget about UFO studies, but you go to a lecture, you pay an amount, and you find out after the fact that somebody has stood up there and simply told you one mistruth after another. I've never come across it before, anything like this, and certainly not in our field.
Well, we've got a break, but when we come back, Peter, I want to hear from either you or Larry, who exactly was there? I mean, higher up than Colonel Halt. I mean, because everybody has denied it, of course, but there were other people, other witnesses that were involved in this, some of them of a high military caliber. And so we're going to bring up that question as soon as we come back from our break in just a couple of minutes. And I'm Tim Beckley. My co-host is Tim Schwartz. And tonight we have as our guests Peter Robbins and Larry Warren. And this is Exploring the Bizarre. And we will be back in just a couple of minutes.
Now back to Exploring the Bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal. Your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Schwartz.
All right, we're back with Exploring the Bizarre, and we're talking tonight with Larry Warren and Peter Robbins. And Tim, you asked a question for Peter about, I think it was who was around that night, or those several nights. Who out there off in the forest?
Yes, who higher up besides Colonel Halt was there? I mean, because everybody else denies, I think, being involved in this.
Well,
who's that?
Certainly Colonel Williams, we very much contend was on location. But I think this is a better question for Larry again, because he is here and he was there.
I was there. Williams was our wing. And I know, he wouldn't, they had a Christmas party going that night. And, you wouldn't just hang out on the base and not come. Or it was Ted Conrad might have been there also. And you just wouldn't say, well, you go and see all this happening. We're going to stay here and give out awards at the base Christmas party, which was actually going on. So, and I bodyguarded for him. He, when he got his star in the early '81. I was very familiar with him, and I was familiar with him the day I got on the base. He gave us our incoming briefing. And there were a lot more people than Colonel Halt. Colonel Halt had a team of men. He went out there to, as he says, to debunk it. And it was a small team of guys that were far from the point of contact, the big part. But I also know they crossed in the second farmer's field, where you hear on the tape. And on their way back in, and a retired police detective here asked him this, and he told me this, and not just me, he told someone else, that he said, well, you would have walked right into Larry, Adrian, John Burroughs, the whole thing. And he said, funny, I don't remember that part. So, yeah, there's a lot of people, man, involved. But but there wasn't 200 people in the woods. That's a quote that came from the early days, when I would say 200 people were working those nights and would have known something about them. There wasn't 200 people running around in the woods. Okay, and there was no British, like the British. What was that stupid newspaper, News of the World? There wasn't British military there at all, and there wasn't helicopters, though you could hear on Woodbridge, which is behind us, probably the 67th Air Rescue fire up at one point. But none of that. They turn it into Close Encounters of it was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. What am I saying? Minus Alan Hynek grabbing his goatee. That was it.
Well, I think for a lot of people, especially here in the States, I mean, the story, if they've been following it, has become so confusing and convoluted, especially now, you're getting the whole, was it secret binary messages and, time travels and an island out in the ocean, kind of like a pilot from Lost or something,
Well, that's Jim doing that, and that's what he says happened to him, and that is a whole subculture. I mean, there were like intelligent people running around. Maybe it is. Maybe it's all about Jim, and the rest of us just cleaned up after.
Guys, this subject does attract strange phenomena. In fact, I've been involved. I know you guys fairly well, but I've become close with other individuals over the years too, and often it starts with a light at treetop level and ends up with manifestations inside an individual's home. Now, Larry, I've heard some rumors over the years, and this has nothing, I don't think, to do with your UFO sighting, but did you have a paranormal, a ghostly experience growing up?
No, I grew up with this phenomena, not ghosts, but seeing things since I was a child. And, again, I'm not from a family where this is a popular thing, and my family never liked me around all this because I think, as parents, they worried. And, I think having the same name as my dad probably wasn't a great thing. But I grew up with very strange things that I would see, and I recall them very clearly. And then as I got older, even when this thing was going on, and the other people in my life experienced and saw things, and not ghosts.
What sort of things?
Well, it's. Well, I guess, I have to be careful here because, when they talk about the abduction phenomena, I don't recall ever being like going through a Travis Walton thing on board something or, and taken away. And if I ever did, I don't want to know it. I don't want to recall that. But I've seen non-human beings very clearly and very awake. And, back in the old days, and of course that's in our book, there were hints of things. And people said, well, that's just going to cancel your ticket. Well, I didn't get involved in this to please people or anything. I went to try to really give some respite to my brothers that went through all this. And also that was part of my history. And that's the way it is. And if people don't like it, well, that's really up to them. That's their problem. That's not mine.
Now, how
I saw Bigfoot on July. Listen, all this. What's it called? Chasing Bigfoot, or what's that show? It's just on tonight. The people run around the woods and scream at each other with Bobo and the Bozo or whatever his name is. Bless their hearts. But I'll tell you, in 1975, with my dear mother, and this is where I know. Because it's 40 years ago, and this year it didn't leave me, but we didn't put that in the book. Oh God, he saw Bigfoot too, but I did. And I saw it in Western New York State off the New York Thruway, and as many other cars did on July 7th, 75, midday. It was about 98 degrees out. And we were driving at about 55, and this thing ran at about 30 miles an hour, chasing a deer, and it hit the back end of the deer. Deer flew in the bushes, and the thing was about 9 feet tall. It was reddish color, and it jumped down this kind of stream there. And we kept driving. My mother was watching it before I was. And we looked, and I looked at her, and we both said at the exact same moment, Bigfoot. And I say my dear sister, is a grandma nowadays, but back then, had we even run it over, she wouldn't have cared at all. My sister has any interest in this stuff at all. But so, things go on, and am I predisposed? I don't know. People in my life that aren't interested in this stuff have seen things, and it ended a relationship, once, which Peter's aware of. And, a lot of people have multiple things, not so much as I get older. I get enough problems, but, but so was I predisposed to, be the guy to say, because I had a childhood interest in UFOs. I think, Tim, I knew who you were when I met you because you used to write for all those magazines. I'd ride my bike and buy Saga's UFO magazine. You could get Blow Up Love Dolls or Charles Atlas's.
Hey, don't give our secret away.
Well, yeah, I was too young. I was too young to really appreciate a Blow Up Love Doll at that point, but I had to get.
And you could also get a BB gun to shoot Bigfoot.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely, and all that stuff. And I remember it was the Ralph and Judy Blum book in '73 and all that. And and there was the Charlie Hickson, Calvin Parker thing in Pascagoula. And eventually, I got to know those guys, and these were like heroes to me. And from about '71. And that was that. I did a book report, and that was it. And I didn't know why, because it was certainly, you would not be hearing the subject matter in my home, no matter what. We didn't have books around about it or anything. But with me, somehow it just clicked, and I'd sit on the roof, and I'd be looking for UFOs or whatever. But I had very strange things. As I was a little kid, I seen something in '66 or '65 off this railroad track, and I can still remember it very clear, and, unless there's something that looks like a praying mantis that wears clothes, that's about 9 foot tall with a thing around an apple. I don't know, man. There it is. You're stuck with your own reality. I mean, I don't give a damn what people think. I've got to live with it. I care what I think. I care what my son thinks.
We've only got a few minutes left. Let's get into some of the weird aspects of all of this. Not that it isn't all weird, but what do you maintain happened to you immediately after the sightings? You were taken somewhere?
No, we were debriefed, and in the Chief Security Police Office by Department of Navy, ONI, that came on our base. There were a lot of different types of debriefings that went on. Later in the day, about 5 o'clock at night, it was getting dark. The next night, I'd already called my mom, so I was already identified as a potential leak. And I guess some other guys called their mother. Adrian called his mother. We just heard that from him. And picked up in a car and taken. And my recollection in our book, and it was written exactly as my mind's eye seen it, is a very sci-fi scenario. And I do think that was plugged into us. So if one did talk about the reality of the events that took place in the forest, we would sound like, figure this, 1980, right? Things were very different in the subject. Underground bases, come on. But there is underground facilities there, and there are some. John Burroughs and I broke into one last year. We were all in. John couldn't fit through the fence; he's too big, and the whole area is littered with them. The deep, deep secret stuff, and abandoned some. But Bentwaters is still locked down. You're not going to get under it, and. The scenario was about 10 minutes of recall, very freaky, weird. But in reality, and I can just get right around that, in 1986, and this is an audio tape that Charles Holt really wanted and got because he wanted some names on it. And it was through a series of ridiculous things. He got his mitts on it. And we were just trying to protect these innocent parties. They're not public people. And there were injections, and it was a very clinical situation. And I explored that through Bud Hopkins. Peter Robbins was right there, and that was about 1996. And I never listened to the tape. I was skeptical about hypnosis, and I didn't want to remember it in the session, because that would tell me then, well, something happened if I spoke and I don't remember it. And I actually didn't. And so what came out was Peter was there. It was a very clinical thing. So all this, what it is, our book, I wrote my parts as it was at that moment, as I perceived it. And then the book, hopefully, which is going to get a new facelift next year and be more succinct and up to date, because it's about 10 years now since we've done that. And that's really the logic there, because I'm not the only one that got injections, and other people did too. But that has nothing to do with the events in the forest that were responded to and what we saw. That was the part of the containment teams that came in to put very, very bizarre. Remember, this is before the Dulce stuff and all that. And even when I went public, none of that stuff was around. I remember when I came out, some of the researchers I met were going, it's all coming out in 85. It's the government's going to admit it all in 85. Well, here we are in 2015, and it's coming out next. Wasn't the world going to end last week or something? Now it's
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but it's now November. They've changed it.
Well, somebody else will have a new end of the world. We still have a question here from Dave. We only read part of his question. Dave says, I met Larry, and he seemed so genuine. In Left at Eastgate, yes, in Left at Eastgate, in the underground area, Larry and the others were told that the Cold War did not exist. What does Peter and or Larry think that meant? Was it a cover of something else?
I think that was part of the containment op, and they said a lot of crazy things that would have sounded, frankly, would have sounded crazy then, but you look back on it nowadays, it all seems like chess pieces. So I don't know how to account for it. I'm the one that went through it, and I've got to live with it. Have no damn idea. But I don't think aliens lived under the base, which I never actually said, by the way. I think people that's more fun for folks again. But thanks, Dave.
Did you not see some sort of image of an alien, however?
No, there was a screen, and I think Sergeant Bastinza doesn't want to talk too much about it, and that's fine, but there was a screen-like thing. We were drugged. Not like drugs. We were drugged.
Real drugs. Real
sodium,
drugs.
Sodium amythol and things like that, and controlled drugs, And there was an image of someone, and that's how it seemed to me, but I was under the influence of some sort of a drug behind a screen. I choose to think it was just someone blocking, or just our mental perception showed it that way. But it wasn't like E.T. standing there talking to us. I've never claimed it, never said it. And, if people need that, then that's fine. You can make it that way. It's very frustrating because what do you think? Well, I lived it, and I don't know what to think about that. And I can still picture some things of that. But I'd like to choose to go with the regression that the late Bud Hopkins did with me, where it was a very clinical thing, and it makes much more logical sense than getting, because there was enough to deal with in the woods, in the forest. We're still dealing with people trying to say this is a lighthouse and calling us all UFO spotters. And, we have to battle them instead of battling ourselves. And that we have to remember who the enemy is. And that's the press, and that's the federales, not each other. And, and I have no interest in entertaining the internet bunch at all, whoever they may be.
What do you think? What do you think might be the next big revelation as far as this goes? And is there anyone that you know of who's still kind of on the sidelines but might be coming forward?
Well, there's a lot of guys that, that's a hard thing to lay on people. No one want a piece of this. I think there's some guys that would come forward if we, like the meeting I was talking about, we've had some folks in America, really trump this up on their radio shows, and that we might do this or that. I want to get behind this. And, it takes money, but, will it happen? I don't know. If it was a safe environment and it didn't have all the lunacy and, the ego thing with the subject, and that it might work. if it was in a proper environment and one that can't be denied, can't be taken. I was part of the disclosure thing in 2001. It was the highest rated, the best attended National Press Club event in its history at the NPC, and it was shut down the first hour on the internet. They lost half the people. It had nothing to do with Stephen Greer or anything. It had to do with 20 alleged military people that could back it up. Well, I could back it up. And we spent a whole week in D.C. And
I was there with you. I remember having a drink at the bar with you.
Tim, you're the only ufologist or UFO-related person that they allowed in. Isn't that funny?
Oh, my goodness. Well, that's funny.
It was a bit culty, but we did have drinks, and I think you got upset when the bill came to like $8 per drink at the DC.
Yeah. Hey, you're not living in New York. The average price now is $11, and that's at happy hour.
That will bankrupt you, Mr. Beckley. I'll tell you.
Well, I just increased the price of my books, especially on Kindle, where you can get all at $3.95.
I just want to say we've had knowing Tim Beckley and stuff. What fun over the years, and I want to thank you for your friendship, my brother.
Well, you're both two of the most genuine guys that I know in the field, regardless of what Colonel Holt or anybody says about you. I got your back.
Thank you, Tim.
I love you guys, really, and. Really thank you, Tina, and everybody, And who's the other fella on here? The poor guy. Did he go home?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, my God. Well, next week we're having Rosemary Ellen Guiley, and Tim is going to do almost the entire interview because, I just, it's just that with Lawrence. Are you using Lawrence now instead of Larry?
My Facebook got hacked, so I had to start again.
I wondered why that was. It took me a week or so to find out where you had.
I'm hiding.
From.
I had 4,000 people and prostitutes from the Philippines, and they're back again. But we do our best. I do it. It's really for family. The Facebook thing with me, it gets frustrating.
Well, I know friends of mine who stay on Facebook about 18 hours out of the day.
I think it's more than that. Yeah.
It does kind of suck you in after a while. And I guess, to me, it's the place where you can reach the most people all at one time. It's kind of replaced, in the old days when I was a kid, we used to pound on the old manual typewriters. We would send out carbon copies of our thoughts and our letters and the sightings we had gathered and send them around to everyone. Well, if you were unlucky and got like the 7th copy, you would never be able to read because of the smudges. and of course, the paper, if you remember, Peter, was called onion skin.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not exactly sure why that was, but to make matters worse, the color of the paper was yellow. And if you had a particularly bad typewriter, the keys would cut holes into the paper so that actual letters and words would be missing.
I actually had that typewriter.
But today, so we should be glad that we have the internet and we have the ability to reach dozens and hundreds of people all in one click. Even if they're sleeping through the best parts.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I had people asking, over here because it's stupid o'clock in the morning here. Is this getting podcast or? Is that
well, it's live at this very moment.
It's
and
live.
Then thanks to Tina, she will archive it usually very quickly.
Oh, great.
And then for the finale, everyone can go to my YouTube channel, which is Mr. UFO's Secret Files.
Whoa.
And I think there's something like 55 interviews up there now, including the past 5 episodes of the show that Tim and I have done. And thanks to our friend Peter, who adds a little dramatic a twist and some extra photos and all. It's like the two of you are in everybody's living room, especially if you're watching it on and listening on a 40-inch smart TV screen like I am. But
Nice.
This channel, this digital network now, that has some of the best programs on the paranormal and some really live, upbeat music in the daytime when they're not rebroadcasting our show. And it's been a great move over here, and I've had some great shows, and I hope we'll be on the air for many, many months and years to come, because I really enjoy doing this. You know, I enjoy finding out things. For years and years, decades and decades, I was on the other side of the microphone, being asked mainly the same questions over and over and over again. And now I could turn the tables on everybody and do the same thing. But I hope I know a little bit more about the subject, and I hate to say, but I do, than most talk show hosts, and so I know the right questions to ask. And Peter, one last time, the name of your book.
In Woodbridge.
On Amazon.com.
Indeed.
Tim, Peter, Tina, and Tim.
Thank you, guys. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you for a wonderful show. And keep on trucking. And next time we're going to talk about music, rock and roll, and blues.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bizarre and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the Bizarre.